Hello and welcome to today's session titled How to Create a Leadership Development Plan. My name is Laura Sievers and I will be walking you through a variety of content today. But before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. I graduated from Illinois State University with a bachelor's in medical laboratory science and became an ASCP credentialed medical laboratory scientist. I worked for a regional medical center, around 220 beds, for about 10 years, which is where I began my leadership journey, informally among my peers, and then more formally when I was acting as the lead evening shift scientist. I then furthered my education and received my master's degree in healthcare administration from the University of St. Francis. From there, I became more specialized in transfusion medicine, where I assumed the role of technical specialist and manager of the blood bank and hematology and coagulation section. I also was point of care testing supervisor on top of that. After gaining a wealth of knowledge and experience in leadership and healthcare operations, I made the move to Washington University School of Medicine. I started out as a hematopathology coordinator and was shortly promoted to the role of director of clinical operations. I currently oversee 7 laboratories and clinical service lines. And in all of my experience, I felt that leadership skills are important, whether you're in a formal title or not. They're the foundation by which we navigate the complexities of our careers and how we choose to interact with our peers, our direct reports, and our clients. I'm excited to be covering some wonderful content, and I'm very thankful for ASCP, both for allowing me the opportunity to use this platform to share my knowledge and experience, but also for the resources that they provide laboratory professionals and pathologists who want to sharpen their skills and develop ways to propel their careers. To start off with, I have no relevant financial disclosures. In today's session, we're going to be building an understanding of various leadership styles and how to self-assess leadership qualities. We're also going to learn to recognize core leadership skills and how to prioritize developing those skills, and learn to develop an actionable leadership development plan. So what is a leadership style? A leadership style refers to a leader's approach to guiding, motivating, managing, and communicating with their team. During this session, we are going to review 6 different leadership styles. Each style is characterized by specific behaviors and attitudes that influence how decisions are made, how they interact with their team, and what their approach is to accomplishing goals. We're going to be diving into each one of these styles in a moment, but first, I'd like to consider what kind of approach we should take when determining our own style. First, consider your personality traits, your weaknesses, your strengths, and your own values. Further, consider your ability to delegate. This is going to be especially important when we start leading teams of people. I encourage people during times of self-reflection that they write down all of the things that they're thinking about in terms of their own strengths and weaknesses and values in a journal so they can refer to it throughout their development journey. Next, consider the traits of others that are inspirational to you. Identifying a leadership style isn't just being told what you are based on a formal assessment, but it's a combination of shaping your own characteristics and skills based on your experiences, mentors, and teams. There are quite a few formal assessment tools that you can use to aid you in discovering your own style, such as the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the DISC Personality Assessment, or Gallup Strengths Finder. I've used all 3 of these personality assessments, if you will, in one way or another in my career. They all share different information and provide different insights. The key is to answer the questions honestly. And as we walk through these different leadership styles, I'll be the first to tell you that leaders often oscillate between a variety of leadership styles depending on the team that they lead, the goals of that team, and the culture of the environment in which they lead. So if you find yourself wondering, how can you fit into just one category? Know that you don't have to choose just one style. In development, we're going to be finding trusted sources of feedback. This is going to come in the form of mentors, colleagues, even direct reports that you may have that you trust. It's going to be imperative to have someone there to practice these skills with and to get relevant feedback. I'd be remiss if I didn't do a little plug for the ASCP mentorship program. It's a really wonderful program where it allows you to connect mentors and mentees together so we can have these kinds of open dialogue and practice these skills together in a safe space. So jumping right into the various types of leadership styles, we're going to start with transformational leadership. This is a style that emphasizes change and transformation. Leaders who develop this type of style strive to inspire their teams to achieve more than they ever thought possible by tapping into their potential. Their key characteristics are being focused on future, change, and on their team. Delegative leadership is a style that relies on trust within their team, trusting that they will do their jobs as assigned. This is one of the least intrusive forms of leadership, and is generally referred to as hands-off. Their key characteristics include delegation, as the name suggests, which allows their teams to creatively and independently think to meet their goals. Now, authoritative leadership is a style that mentors their team in a follow-me approach. Leaders with this style tend to motivate and inspire those around them by providing overall direction and feedback, fostering a sense of accomplishment among their team. Their key characteristics are that they're hands-on, they rely heavily on relationship building and camaraderie. Transactional leadership is a style that is often referred to as managerial leadership. This relies on a rewards-based system. Leaders that utilize the style often emphasize structure in a give-and-take relationship. Their key characteristics are being structured in a more black and white fashion. They tend to be detailed in the roles and responsibilities of each of their team members and have a reward structure to ensure that their rules are being followed. Participative leadership is a style that encourages their team members to be involved in the decision-making process through listening and communication. Leaders who adopt this style encourage collaboration through accountability. That fosters a team mentality that focuses on solutions. Their key characteristics are that they're generally spontaneous and candid communicators who empower their teams to do the same, all the while demonstrating how each person brings their own unique value to the team. And lastly, servant leadership. It's a style that puts the needs of others first. It emphasizes creating strong relationships to help their teams reach their full potential, both individually and collectively. At its core, this leadership style is about ethical decision-making that fosters creative problem solving. Their key characteristics are to foster cross-collaboration and communication that empowers their team to think creatively and come up with solutions and build upon one another's ideas. As we walk through the various styles of leadership, I'm sure it's difficult to pinpoint which one you fit into. And that is true for me as well. I gravitate towards servant leadership, but I have utilized each one of those styles in one form or another throughout my career. So next we're going to move into defining what leadership skills are. As we move into defining leadership skills and diving into the development of those skills, it's important to reflect on the fact that while there are defined differences between those 6 leadership styles that we covered, you can recognize that there are times in your career, certain projects or certain teams that may have you considering a variety of styles. Like I mentioned, for myself, I tend to gravitate as my home base to servant leadership. However, I have had to utilize each one of these styles at one time or another. It's important to know where you naturally gravitate towards because it could help identify those skills that may need more development. For example, if you are naturally an authoritative leader, you may have trouble delegating and would need to practice that skill. So what are leadership skills? They are the defining principles by which leaders model their behaviors, and the same principles they use when developing themselves. In understanding your primary leadership style, and your own strengths and weaknesses, you can begin to prioritize various skills by setting goals and creating a development plan to meet those goals. We're going to dive deeper into the development plan later on in this session, but for now, we're going to move through what I would consider the top 9 essential leadership skills. Though I've defined 9, you're going to notice that there's going to be many common themes in intersectionality, and this is because leadership is person-based and oftentimes very fluid. Developing leadership skills is crucial for personal and professional growth, regardless of the title you hold, as it empowers you to guide effectively, drive innovation, and achieve your goals. While the prospect of enhancing these skills may seem daunting, breaking the process into small, attainable goals makes it manageable and achievable. By focusing on one skill at a time and steadily building upon your progress, you can gradually transform your leadership capabilities and gain confidence in your ability to lead effectively. Remember, every step forward, no matter how small, brings you closer to becoming the leader you aspire to be. Leadership is so much more than being intelligent and well-spoken. To engage people, you need to know them. Without relationships, there is no trust, no extra effort. People don't work for an abstract idea. They work for a person who reflects and represents their own mission and the mission of the organization. People who work together spend a lot of time together, and they're going to remember those that made the extra effort in getting to know them. This doesn't necessarily mean you need to be best friends, but if you want to have an engaged team, you need to get to know everyone on that team. Leaders who excel in relationship building possess these 5 key areas of strength. They're self-aware, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, as well as how your behaviors impact others, ensures you're leading by example. They're willing to delegate important tasks. This type of delegation instills confidence in your team that you trust them. It also forces you as a leader to be proactive in the development of the people around you. They have strong interpersonal skills. Practicing empathy and understanding the needs of your team will help develop a rapport with that team. They effectively listen and engage with their team to build consensus and influence decisions based on the diversity of thought within that team. They give constructive, effective feedback. Feedback lets your team members know how they're doing. It reinforces the team goals and encourages participative effort. Next up is communication. Here we have a list of different parts of communication, and we'll dive a little deeper into each one, starting with active listening. It's important as a leader to know when to listen. It's important to stay in the moment and avoid listening to respond. To help achieve a safe, distraction-free environment, all attempts should be made to remove the external stimuli, such as emails, cell phones, etc. Showing that you care by asking for opinions, ideas, and feedback while taking notes is important. Being actively engaged by posing questions and inviting the response helps maintain presence in the moment. Next up, transparency. Acknowledging mistakes in a psychologically safe way can encourage experimentation and active problem solving. This goes hand in hand with creating a bottom-up management style when dealing with complex problems. Every individual should understand the role they play in their organization's success. The more transparent a leader is, the easier it is for the individual to make a connection to the work that they do. Transparency doesn't mean tell all. It's at the discretion of the leader to determine the level of information that that person needs to know at that time. Next is clarity. When communicating in any modality, it is important to speak to specifics. The clearer you are, the less confusion there will be around priorities. This drives engagement as individuals know what they're working towards. Next is open-ended questions. You should seek to understand the goals, motivations, and thoughts of those around you. Leveraging certain phrases or key questions can elicit a more thoughtful response. Try these prompts during your next conversation, such as, tell me more about. Explain what you mean. Can you please define that concept for me? Feedback. Asking for feedback can help you grow as a leader and build trust with those around you. If you continue to receive feedback but don't implement change or explain why certain changes can't be made, people are going to lose their faith in your ability to follow through. Empathy. There is a reason that empathy is ranked as the top leadership characteristic. The better you are at acknowledging and understanding the feelings and experiences of those around you, the more heard and valued they will feel. And lastly, your ability to adapt in communication. It is essential to define and understand your own personal leadership style and how your team members identify with various leadership styles. For example, an authoritative leader likely has a clear vision for achieving success and aligning the team. This may be an effective approach for some, but for others, it may not translate into something meaningful. Some people who desire more autonomy in their role might not feel engaged with an authoritative leader. Everyone's motivations are different, so knowing how to tailor your communication is essential to influencing those around you. The next leadership skill we're going to go over is negotiation, arguably one of the ones I get asked most about, and truthfully, one of the harder things to practice and one of the harder things to become proficient in. But I've broken this down into sort of 3 buckets: planning, value creation, and strategy. With planning, we want to think about a clear idea of what success is and where your boundaries are. That's essential. Without preparation, important terms of this negotiation may be overlooked. There are a few fundamental principles related to negotiation planning. First, the zone of possible agreement. It's a set of terms in which you and the other parties can find common ground. A positive zone exists when various terms you're willing to agree upon overlap, and a negative zone exists when very few to none of your agreeable terms overlap. This is generally defined as the content of which you are negotiating. Secondly, it is relevant to develop a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This is crucial because if the discussion steers towards a negative zone, then you know your next steps. This ensures that you always have a plan B, and it helps you avoid leaving the table or the conversation empty-handed. Value creation is the next step sort of in planning, but I really feel like it needs its own bucket to really appreciate it. When developing a plan prior to the negotiation conversations, you need to illustrate your value proposition. This is a mix between what you know to be the strengths of your position, along with the vantage point of the counterpart. Traditionally, negotiations have been defined as 2 parties vying over the same resources, trying to compete to get their deserved and desired share based on individual perception. One way to instantly create value in your stance is to figure out a way to maximize resource utilization or expand the share from which you're negotiating from. This allows you to realize greater value and establish a relationship of trust with the counterpart. In terms of laboratory medicine and pathology, value creation is something that we either are very good at or not so great at. When we are vying for the same pool of money as certain sectors of healthcare, like nursing, radiology, pharmacy, those that are more in the front line, more patient facing, it is a little more challenging for us to create that value proposition. As a group internally, we know what we bring to the table. But if there's anything in this section that I can really drive home, is that you have to understand who you are negotiating with and what they value. For example, I worked in a blood bank that was doing everything manually, though there was plenty of automated platforms out there that would really help us out in terms of workflow operations, in terms of patient identification, and any other sort of analytical and human error that could be associated with a manual process. Now, the first time I wrote a value proposition for this piece of equipment, I did it from my perspective as the manager of the transfusion service. What's it going to do for my staff? How excited am I going to be? When it went before the finance committee of the hospital, other projects and capital expenses were chosen over that. And I was disappointed. And I really had to think long and hard about what this meant for my next steps. And I got some really sage advice from a mentor of mine who really directed me to think of the vantage point of the person or people that you are trying to negotiate with. Again, we are all vying for the same pool of resources. So what is going to set me apart that aligns with those people's values? So I looked at who was on our finance committee, and during the next capital budget planning requests, I rewrote my original proposal from the vantage point of what does this mean for our CEO, our CFO? What does this mean for the nurse leaders? And after submitting that revised proposal, we were awarded the capital budget. It was an incredible win, and I was so thrilled. And it really was due to the fact that I changed the vantage point. All of the numbers were still the same. The base message, the metrics I used, all of that remained. I just reworded everything to come from the vantage point of those making the decision. Next up is strategy. Thorough preparation is key. However, so is utilizing the right tactics for the conversation. Emotions play a big role in negotiation, kind of as I alluded to before. Consider the counterpart's vantage point and what's important to them. This is going to help you shape your discussion point and understand why certain parts of the negotiation may elicit more of an emotional response than others. It's important to keep an open mind during these conversations. Adaptability is imperative since opportunities may arise. Being open-minded should still align with your personal guiding principles that you've defined during the planning process. Laying your cards on the table allows for a more open dialogue and constructive negotiation. This assists in building trust in a group setting. Next, your body language should convey confidence. For example, having your head slightly tilted exposes your neck and conveys a message that you're listening and receptive. By contrast, if you're covering up your neck, you may be conveying that you're uncomfortable or concerned. Sometimes you can't physically leave the discussion, but you can always pause and take a deep breath. Pausing is a great way to give yourself and the counterpart time to digest the conversation and consider your next responses. It may also lead to some discomfort on the counterpart, and if managed correctly, may lead to a better deal. For this particular skill, having someone trusted alongside you who has been through negotiations is really important to do some role-playing activities and to really get their feedback of what did work well and what didn't work well. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about adaptability. Adaptability in leadership is crucial in an ever-changing world. Not practicing this skill could lead to rigid behaviors, which could leave you behind the curve on innovation. Further, flexibility in your style will allow you to lead a diverse team. Diverse teams offer a wealth of perspectives and ultimately lead to better decision outcomes. Leaders should always be looking for opportunities to learn new things. This could include learning across departments in your hospital in a cross-collaborative manner to see how common problems are solved. It could also mean learning new perspectives from the people around you. Creating an environment that fosters psychological safety empowers people to trust and respect one another. This allows people to feel as though they can be their authentic selves at work. This will also foster an open dialogue and more thoughtful decision making. Introspectively, you need to practice emotional agility. What I mean by that is it's the ability to bounce back quickly when situations go awry. Being able to have an optimistic mindset and develop a support system within your team will continue to garner engagement, even when situations don't go as planned. Building relationships and practicing empathy is the first step in strengthening your emotional agility. As the world is moving in all different directions, having a grounding central focus is key, and it allows you a compass when navigating the challenges that leadership brings. Be sure to recognize that a strong central core does not mean there is one way to do something. Rather, it's a foundational principle or principles that ensure your leadership style doesn't get lost. Critical thinking enables leaders to understand the impact of their decisions on their team and their organization, and is the culmination of reason, goal orientation, and purposeful decisions. Organizational decisions need to be made in a fair and objective and accurate way that has basis in information relevant to that decision. Critical thinking is also known as big picture thinking and refers to the ability to see the situation from a higher level and make decisions across those levels. Most people operate in functional silos, whether you're inside a laboratory or outside of a laboratory. To consider what influences there are inside and outside of those silos helps leaders balance their team's issues with the broader organization. As a leader, developing critical thinking skills is an evolutionary process that requires practice. There are a few key components to consider when sharpening those skills. First, seek feedback about your current critical thinking skills. Again, you're noticing a common theme here about feedback. Next, challenge yourself to develop a deeper understanding. I like to encourage folks to practice 5 whys. That's literally asking why 5 times in a row to get beyond the initial thought and develop a more profound comprehension of the situation, the issue, or the problem. Also, use multiple data sources to create an informational matrix that assists in making data-driven decisions. As laboratory professionals and pathologists, we are used to working with data. This is a strength of ours. And this is also something that is incredibly relevant when critically thinking. And lastly, ask for input when analyzing various decision alternatives. Especially in an organizational team, it is really important to bounce ideas off trusted colleagues, off trusted team members, to ensure that you are thinking of all different vantage points. Again, a common theme also is diversity in thought. It should be celebrated and celebrated in a way where you trust the input from these diverse groups of folks. Almost going hand in hand, we'll move right into decision making. This is a cornerstone of effective leadership, encompassing the ability to analyze complex situations, weigh various options, and make informed choices that guide an organization or a team towards its goal. For leaders, this includes balancing the short and long-term needs and goals of the organization and team. Effective decision-making is a blend of analytical skills, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight. Part of the leadership development is making decisions on behalf of and for your team and/or the organization. Some of these decisions are seemingly minute, while others are complex and challenging, with the potential to change the organization or team as a whole. There are a few key considerations in decision making that span across any spectrum of decision being made. First, involve your team or your colleagues. Input from your team ensures that there is buy-in of the decision and that different perspectives are being considered and understood. Next, understand your responsibility to various stakeholders. Identify those stakeholders. Though we function in organizational silos most often, it doesn't mean that our decisions are going to remain in those silos. Oftentimes, if we make a change within our laboratory, it affects folks in IT, it affects our nursing colleagues, it may affect our revenue cycle colleagues. This means ensure your decision aligns with the overall organizational mission and strategy and fulfills the duty that you have to others and ensures that they're involved in this decision-making process. And lastly, leverage data. Data can help inform decision-making and is often utilized when negotiating those discussions. Data often tells a story that helps us uncover what our decision ultimately should be. Motivation and influence are essential to the success of a team or organization. A leader's goal in motivating and influencing their teams is not to manipulate or control, rather to inspire and encourage others towards a common goal or objective. Your colleague and team members seek motivation at work through different means. However, their common theme is that most people will lose motivation if they believe that they're putting more into a job or a project than they're getting out of it. A leader's responsibility in motivating and influencing their team is to determine a common vision, communicate that vision clearly, provide resources to achieve this vision, and balance the interests of the organization with the vision of the team. Once establishing and communicating a clear vision to your team, a leader should recognize and reward this good work, coach and develop their team members, and lead by example. Common motivational techniques include asking others for their input, validating their good work, setting intermittent goals, radiating positivity, and creating a safe and inspiring environment, and encouraging mindfulness within yourself and others. As a leader, there's a general expectation in your role, whether formal or not, that will include resolving conflict quickly and effectively. A proactive leader creates a future for their team and supports their team in developing the skills needed to deal with challenges independently and build confidence and conflict resilience. Your preferences for responding to a conflict will dictate how you deal with these issues. It's a useful practice to self-reflect on past conflicts and recognize what approach you took and how you felt during and after the resolution. You'll notice some common interview questions really align with your thoughts, feelings, and experiences in conflict management and conflict resolution. So at any level of an organization, this is going to be one of those hot topic leadership skills. Another key leadership aptitude is to get to know all of the members of your team so you can spot warning signs or trigger points for potential conflict. Indicators for a potential conflict may be copying you on emails that they normally wouldn't, becoming disengaged, or using defensive language during conversation. As a leader, if conflict is not avoidable, you can follow some key principles to ensure that you are in control and managing the conflict in an equitable way. First, set boundaries and ground rules in discussion. I actually do this in any group setting that we're in, starting off any meeting, setting the tone. Here's what we are and what's in scope, what's out of scope, and here's my expectation for how we'll respect each other. Also, choose a neutral space to talk. I usually like to have more difficult conversations outside of my office, away from our general workspace, and sort of be in an area that is private, but also neutral. Be mindful of your own biases and allow everyone involved an opportunity to share their perspective. And as a mediator, guide people towards a solution. It is easy to get stuck at pointing fingers, placing blame, and rehashing the same experience over and over again. But what's really going to drive change and a resolution is to guide folks towards a solution. This means developing an action plan. It could be as simple as making a change of behavior or apologizing. And also, practice active listening. Again, this follows back to allowing everyone involved an opportunity to share and being mindful of your own biases. This is also another skill that I'm constantly working on, and I do a lot of self-reflection when it comes to conflict management, and I encourage folks to do the same. It's really important to consider what went well during interactions and what didn't go well. And as you start to build relationships with your team, I think you'll find that you can stop a lot of things from turning into a conflict simply because you know them and you've built trust and rapport. One of the final of the 9 leadership skills is delegation. Not every task can be delegated. For example, performance reviews, personnel matters, that should all be handled by the person's manager. However, other day-to-day activities might not require managerial oversight. Some things to consider when deciding what to delegate are these tasks that you regularly perform that somebody else on your team might be better equipped to handle? Would assigning the task to someone else bolster their career and give them more experience? This last point is incredibly relevant. In my own career, I had a mentor who saw in me that I wanted to gain more leadership experience, understand the operation of the hospital a little bit more in depth. And at first, I was assigned a duty to help pull reports for turnaround times. And at the time, I thought, well, okay, that's one thing to do. When she actually sat down to explain why, was pulling this data and compiling these reports so I could then be a part of a discussion and really know and understand and be able to speak to the data. When it came time to sit in an interdisciplinary team with members from across our hospital, nursing leadership, in both the emergency room and inpatient units, talking to radiologists, all of the physician groups. So she really had some forethought into what this task meant for me and my longevity and my career goals. And so it was with that small task that she assigned me that I was able to sort of blossom into other conversations and open my network up. Every person has goals they're working towards, and within those professional goals are opportunities to delegate tasks to help them achieve their goals. The type of work you delegate should be factored into their professional development. For example, if a person wants to gain leadership experience, is there a defined project they can take a lead on? Think about leveraging your own team's strengths. When someone has a higher chance of excelling, they're more motivated and engaged. Passing off work to someone isn't delegating. The task should be handed off with proper context and a clear tie to the overall goal. Clarity of objective is important. This should align timeline with measures of success and examples of what success is. Before the transition of the task should occur, ensure that the person being tasked with that new work has the specific training, authority to complete the task, and proper resources, which yes, does include time, to do so. Setting someone up for a task they can't complete because one or more of these things has not been addressed will cause frustration and likely land the task back on your to-do list. Focus on the desired outcome. Why is the task important? And help address the gaps between their current skill set and the task at hand. This ensures that you avoid micromanaging and allow your team member the space to gain new skills autonomously. You need to have some way to communicate so the person you delegated the task to can come back to report, ask questions, and provide feedback. Regular check-ins provide for open communication and a sense of support. It is important to recognize that there may be some variability in completing certain tasks. Allowing people to practice autonomy empowers them to be engaged in the task, in the process, and feel like they are a stakeholder in their own work. Be patient with that person that you've delegated to, and be realistic about how long a task should actually take to be completed. What may take me 10 minutes may take the newly delegated person 30 minutes. My experience is what causes me to be able to act a little faster. People need to have the space to learn and adjust to their new responsibility. If not, their frustration could lead to that task again being back on your to-do list. In addition to monitoring progress, feedback should be given during regular check-ins. This is how people grow and learn. It's how to express expectations. Just as you effectively ask questions to ensure that you provide appropriate direction, a reasonable time frame, or the right type of education and resources to be successful. Recognize the success of those you delegate to. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it has the added benefit of making those around you more engaged. The more you thank and credit those you've delegated work to, the more likely they are to want to help you and others with projects or tasks in the future. Right. So what is a leadership development plan? To be an effective and successful leader, it's important to develop the various skills that align with your leadership style. Further, focusing on areas of weakness will aid in being more self-aware when managing others. A leadership development plan is a strategic plan designed to help individuals gain leadership competency to prepare for leadership roles, whether formal or informal, or enhance their current skill set. These types of plans are structured, longer term, and personalized for the unique needs of the individual. Having a mentor or coach that will help you with the actualization of the development plan is important for your overall success. And again, I harken back to ASCP's mentorship program. All right, and here on the screen we have a leadership development plan template. As mentioned earlier, taking in all of this information can be overwhelming and make you feel as though you're paralyzed with decisions on what to do next. Once you've thought about the type of leader you'd like to become and which style is most reflective of your own, you should take stock in your strengths and weaknesses as it pertains to the outlined leadership skills. As uncomfortable as diving into your weaknesses is, it is certainly the place to start. This is a type of good stress that activates the brain's adaptive processes, enhances cognitive functions, and resilience. This type of mild stress in learning new skills stimulates the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which improve attention, motivation, and problem-solving abilities. Additionally, moderate stress levels can promote neurogenesis, which is the formation of new neurons, and strengthen those neural connections, ultimately boosting learning, memory, and overall brain health. A leadership plan doesn't need to be overly complex to be effective. In my experience, there are 5 key components to a development plan. First, you need to determine which skill you're going to be developing. While I've outlined what I consider the top 9, it may be best to start with 1 or 2 skills at first. Here you see I've chosen to share, delegation, and relationship building. Then next, have a defined development activity. This is going to be the meat of the plan and determine how you're going to practice this skill. I'll be providing in an appendix to this session a variety of activities for each one of these leadership skills that you can engage in with a mentor. For example, with delegation, I should select one task I regularly perform that can be delegated and transition that task to a team member. That will be my activity. In relationship building, I may choose that now I should be implementing a 10-minute morning check-in with each one of my teams. Like I mentioned earlier in my introduction, I have 7 teams. It's about 70 minutes every morning, a little over an hour of my day. Next, I want to self-reflect on your strengths and how you plan to leverage those in this activity. Since my challenge to you is to develop a plan to strengthen your areas of weakness, you might need to consider how you're going to use your current strengths to do that. So what kind of talents do I already possess that will help me be successful in this activity? When I look at delegation, I'm going to say, okay, I have a lot of tasks. That's one strength, right? So I can find one pretty easily, probably, to delegate to somebody. I also am used to and familiar with that particular task. So I possess the knowledge and the resources to be able to pass off that task to another person. In relationship building, I can look at my schedule and notice that I usually block off time in my morning every morning. So it's usually not going to be a scheduling barrier. I can walk in, and all of my facilities are pretty centrally located on the med school campus. So it's a quick walk in the morning to say hello and engage with all of my teams. Next, we want to define our version of success. How are you going to know that you're now more effective in this skill? You'll notice in the appendix that I'm going to be providing most of the activities are role play based and require direct feedback, but others are based on how somebody else is grasping a concept or a task. For delegation, my definition of success for me is that when the task is handed off and now I have minimal intervention to sustain the task and it becomes a part of that person's normal workday. In relationship building, success for me is going to look like positive feedback from my team. This includes a more engaged and positive interactions. I already meet with the leaders of each one of these laboratories and clinical service lines on a regular basis. And I can weave in there some questions regarding my newfound presence with my 10-minute morning check-ins with that team. And lastly, a target completion date. Goals will continue to remain dreams unless we put a date to it and hold ourselves accountable for completing during that time. We don't want our good intentions to go to waste because we kept putting it off because we didn't hold ourselves accountable to a timeline. So we've walked through leadership styles, we've walked through different leadership skills, and talked through a basic leadership development plan. So why do all this? Why develop yourself as a leader? This is a question I really thought about from my own perspective, having gone into a formal leadership title, but also thinking about those I mentor that don't want to be in a formal management role or executive leader role. What benefit does this have for them? From an organizational and social perspective, developing as a leader enables you to positively impact others by driving success and fostering a collaborative and productive environment. It also often is the key to career growth and advancement, opening up new networks and opportunities for higher positions and greater responsibility. Your goal may not be to be a formal manager or an executive leader, but developing leadership skills will help you propel in your academic and scientific career. Also, leadership development fosters self-awareness, confidence, and resilience, which enhances your ability to navigate challenges and achieves personal and professional growth. From a neuroscientific perspective, developing as a leader is like developing any new skill. With new skill development comes neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections. This process improves cognitive flexibility and adaptability. Further, developing as a leader contributes to building cognitive reserve, a mental capacity that helps the brain withstand neurologic damage and age-related decline. It also enhances the brain's function by stimulating various regions of the brain that lead to improved cognitive function. As mentioned before, The brain's response to mild stress is to release specific neurotransmitters that are known to enhance our mood. As you work on developing yourself and potentially those around you, the waves of dopamine and norepinephrine will come with each new challenge and create a more engaging experience for you and your colleagues or team members. I know that was a lot to unpack as we moved through relatively quickly all of this content. So I want to take the last few moments to sort of wrap up what we've learned. In this session, we've explored various leadership styles, 6 to be exact, and learned techniques for self-assessing your own leadership qualities. I hope you consider taking one of the formal leadership assessment tools that I had recommended at the beginning of the presentation, as well as engage in a mentorship program or reach out to a trusted colleague or friend to help you realize the type of leader that you are. Also do some self-reflecting. Again, developing your leadership style and your skills is immensely self-reflective, and I highly encourage journaling and revisit of those past feelings, those past experiences. Also, we've identified essential leadership skills, 9, that I've defined, and discussed their importance in leadership, as well as determine how to prioritize developing these skills. Again, it seems a little daunting. 6 leadership styles, 9 different categories of skills, so much information all at once. And truthfully, just taking it one step at a time. Think about the type of leader you are, who you want to be, looking at those skills that maybe you need a little work on, honing in on 1 or possibly 2 of those skills, and practicing. Repetition and practice equals proficiency. We've also gained insights into creating a tailored leadership development plan and emphasized the importance of setting achievable goals and continuous improvement. While I've been in leadership for the last 12 years, I can tell you that it is a constant cycle of improvement. I am continually working on myself, having meetings with mentors, with coaches, requesting feedback, reading new neuroscientific research, and thinking about ways that I could be a better leader to those I serve. Remember, leadership development is an ongoing journey. Continue to apply what you've learned, seek feedback through mentorship, and strive for excellence in whatever role you have. And I want to take this last few minutes to really thank you for engaging with this session, and I hope that you walk away with some new information and possibly an action item or 2. If you're going to be in Chicago for the annual meeting, I would absolutely love to connect. Please be sure to look out for me and make the introduction. Until then, please check out the ASCP mentorship program and engage with fellow laboratory professionals and pathologists, including myself, on the ASCP online communities. And with that, I want to say again, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share my experience and my knowledge.